So a few weeks ago, Apple introduced to the world the iPad Pro for 2018, and let's just get this out of the way. It's amazing, beautiful hardware. I've always said it's about Apple's hardware. It's just really, really nice. I don't care if you're a fan of Apple or a fan of Microsoft. You just have to at least acknowledge they make nice hardware. Whether it's worth the money, it's a whole separate issue, but they really do good at engineering. And these two new iPad Pros are just really shining examples of the amazing hardware design they can do. But being a Microsoft channel, one that we always cover, say, for instance, the Surface Pro 6, I've always seen a lot of people compare it to the Surface Pro 6, both on Reddit and in comments. And on one hand, I get it. These are similar devices. They're both flat and they both have pens that are optional that you can use for drawing. But besides that, I don't really see the similarities between the two of these things. So I'm asking you guys to stop comparing them, or at least understand some of the core differences here. Now, the iPad Pro is a really good tablet for consuming media, but it still runs iOS. And it's both a good thing and a bad thing. And the bad thing is the stuff that really drives me nuts. For instance, you can't use a mouse with it, or it doesn't have touchpad support, doesn't have a real file system. You can't rename files to add to your email before you send them off. Thumb drives are a no-go. There's a lot of limitations on what you can do with that. And that decision is solely on Apple. So I remember going back to 2012 and people were jailbreaking their iPads and adding mice to it with a cursor, and it totally actually worked, which means Apple's had at least 6 years to figure this out. And it's not because they can't figure it out. They simply just don't want to add mouse and trackpad support to their iPads for whatever reason. I think it's because they want to keep their Mac OS line separate at this time. And I'll be honest, if they added mouse and trackpad support to the iPad Pro, even I would consider using it as a light computing device, especially with that option for LTE. Sure, it's super expensive, and we'll return to that shortly. But since they don't do it, the iPad has just never fit into my workflow. And it may fit into yours, that's totally fine. And I've owned iPads over the years. The one reason you don't see the iPad Pro in front of me is I'm restraining myself this time because I always buy it and then I never use the devices. The current iPad that I have is back at home in my closet, and I try to sell it back to Apple, and even they want to take it back for whatever reason. But my point is I just never figured out how to use this because it's strictly a consumptive device where I can do a lot of that for me on the Surface Pro. Now, the Surface Pro 6 is not a great tablet, and I fully agree here. Comparing those two things is very different. The Surface Pro is a straight up PC that can do tablet-like things. That's one area I think where Microsoft can definitely improve, but this is still just a straight up computer. Now, I know a lot of people say, well, the iPad Pro is not a computer, it's not a laptop. And yet when Apple introduced this device on stage, they made a lot of comparisons to it to being a laptop. In fact, when they were on stage, they showed a graph comparing it to sales of other laptops. And so I think the whole idea of comparing it to a laptop seems fair. After all, they did add a keyboard to it. It looks a lot like a Surface now. Moreover, and this is the real crucial part here, it's the price that matters. The new iPad Pro went up around $200 this year, and now it's really expensive at around $1,000, but you can go up to almost $1,800 with LTE. And that's really crazy because if you think about it, the original iPad was always sort of like an accessory device. You would still have a laptop, whether it was a MacBook, a Surface, or whatever, but you'd have your iPad for that consumptive mode that you wanted to go into. Well, now this new device is a whole other ballpark. When you're spending $1,500 with a pencil and a keyboard for an iPad Pro, I think it's a legit question to ask, can this actually replace my laptop? After all, it costs more than most laptops out there. And it just can't, and that's solely on Apple for not letting that happen. That's really my big issue here with Apple. It's the price. It's not necessarily that the hardware isn't worth it. I actually think it is. It's the OS that totally limits it. Don't forget, people now have to choose a lot of times between buying a laptop and buying an iPad Pro all maxed out. That's a heck of a choice and way different from the one we made years ago. Meanwhile, in the United States, you can pick up the new Surface Pro 6 with a Core i5, 8 gigs of RAM, and 128 gigs of storage, plus micro SD, and keyboard and a pen, all for $800 if you go to Costco, which, yeah, sure, it's a limited thing, but still, that's a heck of a price for this device here. It's just a straight up PC. Overall, I'm really impressed with the iPad Pro's design and hardware. I'm actually glad Apple is out there making this stuff. It does set the bar, and it does make sense for people to look at that and be like, why can't Microsoft make something as beautiful? And I think they should aim for that. But at the same time, I don't really see the comparison between iPad Pro and Surface Pro 6 as being very equal. Yeah, if you're an artist and you need to make a decision about which one one you want to draw on, that is an actual valid choice. But for most people looking for a computer, the Surface Pro 6 is still going to be the best choice on the market. The iPad Pro is going to be full of compromises. And what's really frustrating is those compromises are imposed by Apple themselves. And it'd be really kind of scary, actually, if they fixed all that stuff, because then even I would consider the iPad Pro as a little computer to use on the side. But until then, I think making these comparisons is probably the wrong way to look at it. All right, there's a quick rant that I had to get that off my chest, but let me know in comments what you think. Is the iPad Pro an actual laptop replacement, or does the price justify it as a secondary device for you? If you like this video, give us a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. Take care, everyone.